wrecking yard. I met my true love down in the wrecking yard. I met my true love called a wreck Chevrolet, which I see every day. I am your landlord. I saw my landlord, my God, what has he done? He's on the front page, his girlfriend and his gun. My landlord's in jail. He threw his girlfriend out in the snow. He shot a car and told her to go. My landlord's in jail. It's a living hell. He jumped through a window and under the ground. And all the SWAT teams they did surround. My landlord's in jail. A living hell. My landlord's in jail. It's a living hell. I saw my landlord, my God, what has he done? He's on the front page, his girlfriend and his gun. My landlord's in jail. It's out now.
That was Landlord by my guests for today's podcast, Modern Vending. And welcome to the last episode of The Wrecking Yard for 2018. I will be heading into the new year, still in the position of head cheese around here. There is a lot going on in this podcast. And unlike previous podcasts, I don't really get the chance to talk much at all. When I first suggested this podcast, I did not get what you would call an enthusiastic response from everybody. I'm not sure exactly what that was, although I suspect it may be because most of them have children now. They wouldn't want them hearing some of the stories that would inevitably pop up. I think this is easily the funniest podcast that I've posted so far, and I'm pretty sure that you're going to agree because it's fairly non-stop laughs for almost 2 hours. At the end of the show, I'm going to take us out with the gospel favorite, Hook's Brand Jesus. Sit back, relax, or drive in your car, or whatever you do, and let me just tell you, you're probably not ready for some of the shit you're about to hear. Thanks to everyone who's been listening this year. I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hip Hanukkah, a groovy Kwanzaa, whatever you do. Thanks again. Seriously, starting with Chris. Go around the horn and introduce yourself.
I'm Chris Cruzan.
Thanks.
Good enough.
All right, good.
I'm Mark Urschel.
I'm Duncan White.
James Danger.
Will Sibley.
All right. What do you all have in common? Why are we here?
Not me.
Because you asked us to come over here.
Modern Vending.
Yeah,
Right.
Modern Vending. We're here because of Modern Vending.
All right. What was Modern Vending?
It was a stupid idea. Where were we? We were at Jeff Case's bedroom, or your bedroom.
No, you were at work. You
I
were
was-
at work. You were working the
Jeff
second
Case's
time
bedroom.
around.
Right.
I lived in Jeff Case's bedroom. He lived in my bedroom.
Wait. But when we were talking about names and stuff like that, and I was like, why don't we call it Modern Vending because we get free publicity every
On
time
the trucks.
a Modern Vending truck drives around campus. And someone thought that was a good idea.
I did.
Cheney thought it was a good idea, and well, fuck it. Look at us now. We're rolling.
All right. Now this took place at Ball State, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we've established there was a band called Modern Vending in Ball State. So let's back up before everybody. Who was at Ball State first?
I was.
And
I was there first.
now, were any of these folks there when you were there, or did you have like a year's head start?
I was there for like 2 years
Really?
before. Well,
I was there, but
no, you were there, but we didn't know.
we didn't know each other. Yeah.
So I was there for a year, and then these guys were there the second year, and then the third year is when I met Chris,
Right. Now, did you meet because you all lived together?
We
Did
met
you all live together at
because
one point?
Duncan and I lived across the street from Mark and Jeff,
Okay.
Yeah.
and there was a contest to I was in the
Roots
Fuzzy
and
Warbles.
Oh, okay.
Remember?
Right.
I was in
You
the
were a
Fuzzy
drummer.
Warbles.
So you were in a band before Modern Vending.
Yeah.
Okay, and so was Chris, right?
Yeah.
And so was
Mark.
Will.
So was
Oh, so you all were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're
So
all
it wasn't your
different.
first band for anybody.
White
Oh,
Badger
no.
for Ethiopia.
This was I can't do this anymore.
All right. So so Mark, you got there first. Now
I'm
I want to
sorry.
get a little bit of background here.
I'm
Now,
sorry.
is it true that your dad invented potato chips?
No.
Okay,
Not
so can you clear the air on that
Sure.
one?
My great grandfather invented the gooseberry snapper.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Seriously.
Yeah.
And
better.
and that now I was always told that it was called the Urschel blade. Is that not true?
There is a Urschel blade,
Now, is that the one that makes potato chips?
amongst other things.
Oh, really? Not just potato
Sure.
chips?
No, you gotta tell them
can
what.
cut
Yeah,
You can
help
cut
me
all
out here.
kinds of-
It's not the blade. It's
All
the
I've
metal.
ever-
It's special power. It's got
Okay.
superpower metal. It's called Urschelloy.
Urschel.
Urschelloy.
Because all I ever heard was in kind of like hushed tones,
That's
like
what the band should have been
his,
called.
his blah 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 invented a potato chip machine or something.
You can't
And
talk
so-
about that on the radio.
Yeah. Well,
This is
Why
live
not?
radio, right?
that's what the band should have been called. Urschel.
Urschel.
Urschelloy.
We did say that, damn it.
All right. So your family comes from potatoes.
No,
They
we
make
just help the
blades.
potatoes out.
Yeah.
It's,
All right. So you and Jeff, who?
Jeff Case,
Okay, lived across the street from.
Janie, and Duncan.
Right. Now this was while Chris was still living with me in Indianapolis, right? And while he was
Exactly.
still with the math bats, right?
Mhm.
Right.
And this was also, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Will at the time in Bramble Grit?
Yes.
Was it?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember exactly because you quit the math bats to go to college or to go to Ball State, and I think also you were probably going up there also to be in Modern Vending. That seemed to be icing on the cake.
Working at IBM was not
That's right.
All right.
a lot of fun.
Well, except for the chairs. Those chairs you got were
Oh,
great.
those were awesome.
Hockey chairs.
Yeah, let's
Anybody
go ahead and
hockey?
describe that. Yeah, when Chris and I lived together, he brought home some chairs from IBM. Some
Very similar to these white ones, only
Yeah.
they had wheels.
they had wheels. And who attached the seat belts to them?
Scott Nordoff.
Okay, Scott
So
Nordoff.
we cut the seat belts out of his station wagon.
Okay. Yeah, and so he put seat
Bolted them
belts.
to the chair.
Yeah, bolted on the chair so you could strap yourself into these chairs that had wheels on them.
Yeah.
We had 4 of them, so we had 2 teams, 2 each. And basically, we would play hockey. We had a huge basement. Remember, the
Yeah,
basement was literally the size of the whole house.
Yeah.
This
Where
was
Bramble
in-
get practice,
Yeah.
yeah. Bats practice.
It was 3
right to
whole
left.
rooms down there.
Damn.
And and so one room was the hockey room. We would get down there with hockey sticks and a ball, and we would just run around in these chairs, scooting back and forth. And I remember several times people getting bloody because we'd hit them in the shins with a stick, or people would fall over, lose their balance on the chair. But it was a lot of fun.
Nothing a little cocaine wouldn't help out.
Right.
Yeah.
It was the early 80s.
That was the same basement. Yeah, that was the same basement where your brother posed nude with the fireworks for those weird pictures that I took.
Weird. Weird indeed.
Yeah, we had a picture of him like kind of semi-dressed up like the Statue of Liberty, naked, holding
that
like
would
a
be
10
Will's-
ball.
He'll be super glad this is in the podcast.
I remember that picture.
Yeah, and we also the same night we put fireworks in the toilet.
do.
Remember?
I do.
Great. Oh yeah.
He had
Yeah.
that.
Oh, okay.
I remember that picture. I don't
Yeah.
remember
It's infamous.
the taking
Yeah,
of
a cool
it,
picture.
but seeing that
You
picture.
can't see anything; it's dark. All these
sure,
basically
yeah.
it's like the outline of John, and then there's these fireworks going.
Literally
out.
the outline
Roman
of John.
candle.
The only other thing good.
I took naked pictures of John the
Sure.
real
Hey,
way.
let's talk about taking pictures of my brother for a little while.
Hey, why not?
we've all got them.
Should I? Okay, look,
Oh,
Duncan.
that's all right. I just took a couple pictures of close up of his nads. And I had a
Okay, all right.
Oh, yeah. That's it. That's all I'm going to say on record.
So other than those chairs, the only other cool thing I got from IBM was the bullhorn that we,
The
like the
infamous
first song I
bullhorn?
ever sang with or did with Modern Vending was a duet.
Right. Now,
right.
Called
That included-
duet.
Yeah,
I'll do it.
and
Yeah.
it was
Okay.
awesome.
now when
The
when
bullhorn
when-
from IBM.
when we were still living together, you were making trips down to Muncie. Were you at one point playing with both bands at the same time?
Yeah, and Will was playing with both bands at the same
I was
time
playing with
at
Bramble
one
Grit
point as
and
well.
Modern Vending for about 6
Steve
months.
Schmidt was the original drummer.
And then
in
he had to
Modern
like go
Vending.
back to Chicago or something. Was that it?
Graduated.
Or he just wasn't interested in
He
continuing?
was working at the
Yeah.
ice factory.
That
and he
would
was
have
like,
been the
fuck
end
this
of-
place.
85, right?
Uh-huh.
The spring of 85.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so but Will, did you ever go to Ball State or did
No.
you?
No.
So you just?
He's an IU guy.
I'm an IU guy.
Oh, okay, all right. So
Have drums. Will.
We'll travel.
right
And you did.
I did.
Thankfully.
Did no shit.
now,
A
did
lot.
you quit Bramble Grit because it was a hassle, or did they kick you out?
Maybe 50-50.
Well, I mean, they had kind of a rotating door going there for a
They
while.
did, yeah.
Yeah,
And I wasn't allowed to rotate back in at any time, I can tell you that.
But the weird thing is that Steve Schmidt was our drummer. I was totally happy with that. But then our first performance with Will was opening up for Big Black at the Southgate House, and I watched that tape, and I can say that we were even better than Big Black for that one show. I can say that. Steve Albini, I can say that.
I'm not sure how you could tell with that horrible audio. That might have the worst audio of anything I ever taped.
That's all right. It was great.
That was a, yeah. That
It was
a-
awesome.
That was a great show.
I didn't remember that was your first show.
All
They
right.
said, "Hey, here's our brand new drummer, Will Sibley," and
Now,
click,
was
click,
there
click, and
was there a show that had the Math Bats and Bramble Grit and Modern Vending playing in sort of a largish room that would have been Bramble Grit's first show?
That would have been the Vogue. Bramble Grit's
Well, we
first
played
show.
a show up in Muncie at the Student Center.
That sounds right.
React to Art.
Yeah,
React
yeah,
to
yeah,
Art.
That's
yeah,
it.
Yeah, React.
That
Art.
was
Facts
it.
of Life. We were on there for
Because
the whole time.
remember Steve, I don't know if he ever got past it or much past it, but remember he
Not Steve Schmidt.
had Steve Tagg. He had the
Bramble Grit.
lyrics, on a clipboard, and he basically had the clipboard the whole time. He didn't trust himself to memorize the lyrics.
Well,
quite
Duncan
yet.
didn't need a clipboard because
I
Duncan didn't need
had-
lyrics.
I didn't even like it at all. I
Nick
just
Drake
said whatever
review
the
of
fuck
that
I
show.
said.
Really?
Nick Drake wrote a review of that show in the Muncie
Right,
paper. And
exactly.
I actually have a copy of that.
I do too, actually, and I may just put it on the website with all this other stuff. Okay.
Don't put that picture with the one that you showed me. Don't put that picture on there. Please God, please God, don't do it.
All right. Okay, so
I think that was isn't that where the first vending shirt picture came from? Was the React Art show?
No, that was the first show at in the basement.
It was the No Bar.
The No Bar.
Yeah.
Really?
My sister made these shirts, and she didn't like my head, so she gave me a new head.
And Steve wasn't in the picture at all. It was just like me in front, Biff and Janie and
All three of us.
all three of us. Yeah.
okay, someone describe the No Bar.
What
was
was
a
the
little
phrase?
It was
Maybe twice as big as this basement.
They can't see your basement.
Well, I think the craziest thing about the No Bar was just the shape of it, because it's like a U shape with the cafe area on one side and then the.
More
Shit,
like an
Janie-
L
Janie
shape.
Yeah, more
knows
like an
more
L
about
shape,
that
yeah.
than any of us.
Yeah, Janie can describe it best.
Well,
She spent more time down there than anybody.
You turned it
it's
into a
like
drum
drinks.
It was an
Just a-
all ages club,
yeah,
right?
all ages club in the basement of a.
Record store at one point. Right?
Well,
No,
It was
no,
next to the
sorry, it
record
was
store.
next to the record store. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's an old building. That building was like, shit, built in the 20s or.
Yeah.
And so we had the No Bar took up like 1/3 of the basement, and then the rest was just storage and filled with crap.
Yep.
But it was.
Ian.
I mean, it was.
The hunted has become the hunter, or the hunter has become the
Oh,
hunted.
that's true.
I mean,
Okay,
I have the door.
We're gonna
Right.
talk about
The no bar.
the no bar, and we just want to know your feelings
Your
around
favorite
your
memory.
favorite memory from the no bar. Hold on a second.
Put it on speaker.
You're on speakerphone, and you're talking to Tony Philpott and Modern Vending.
Hello, Tony Philpott, Modern Vending.
Hello.
Hi, Ian.
Hello, Ian.
Yeah, okay, well, anyway, yeah, I'm Ian Rands. I'm the son of John Rands, one of the owners of the No Bar. And I think I was also Modern Vending fan number one.
Number one.
I don't know if that's like, if that was in ranking or if I was just the first one.
both.
Both.
It's a position I still hold on with pride. I was happy to find some old No Bar tapes from the soundboard up on the internet on Musical Family Tree. So I was happy to be able to share that. But yeah, the No Bar was I can't narrow it down to like my a favorite memory because I mean it was a big part of my life for like 3 years. I mean, I was there with my father. You know, when he like painted the sign that later got stolen by frat boys. It was just like I was kind of a weird, awkward kid with a strange name in Muncie, Indiana, and then when the No Bar opened, it was suddenly like I had like a clubhouse and I had like friends and stuff. So I mean, I could go
Older
through
and
and
creepy
say
for
like,
him.
yeah, I saw Big Black, but I mean,
That's right.
I mean, the bigger thing was that I actually like had compadres, and 5 of which are there right now.
That's right.
We want to know what happened to Snake Venom.
You don't know Snake
Do you?
Venom.
Are you sure?
Yeah, what happened to him?
Snake Venom, I believe, died.
See?
Before,
All right.
I mean, I believe. Now, okay, this is all Muncie to do. This is still when I lived there, so this would have been early '90s. But I know Snake was outed as a narc.
Oh, he turned on.
And since, I mean, you
me.
can't use somebody's real name, but everybody only knew him as Snake Venom.
Right.
So it was actually published in some sort of zine that he was a narc, and I believe he died of. And don't quote me on this, even though I'm being quoted right now. I think it was a drug-related death.
Oh,
So there you
no.
go. There's your feel-good story.
Thank you for that.
Awesome.
Finally, we
figured out what the fuck happened to Snake
Thank you,
Venom.
Ian.
Thank you, Ian.
There's closure now.
No, total closure.
All right, so I got Snake Venom's dirt out of the way. Anything else?
No, we're good.
That's okay, Ian. Thanks for throwing it in.
Thanks, because that was fucking brilliant.
Very helpful.
Yes, it
Well, no,
was.
but seriously, I mean, I'm happy to be asked. I mean, yeah, if you guys have got anything else for me, let me know. But yeah, seriously, thank you for thinking of me, and I'm glad that you guys are all in the same room.
All right.
Yeah, so are we.
Yep, we love you.
We'll
we love
send you a picture.
We'll send you a picture. God
So
bless
you
you,
go, oh my
Ian.
God,
you
look
very
how
much.
old those dudes are.
God bless you.
All right, I love all of you, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, Ian.
Bye.
Okay, so back to the history. You have at this point, Will, you have either quit or been booted from Bramble Grit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you, I think,
Have either quit or been booted from the map.
no, that's not true at all. We never booted you. I got the idea, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you
You're
never
wrong.
actually stated it outright. But I had the idea that perhaps you were enjoying playing with one or two of us less and less as time went on. Would this be a correct assumption?
To put it, yes. To put
Okay.
it
Put
in
it, yes,
perspective, you know.
Since one of them wasn't
moving
me,
up
you're
to
not going to hurt my
yeah,
feelings.
moving up to Muncie and having the math bats in literally different states at that point.
Yeah, we were in
time.
limbo also because, I mean, Fred was gone. He was living in
My
Chicago.
point of it is living in different states, moving up to Muncie, and the fact, Modern Vending was a not a chore. It was easy for me to jump in with these
Sure.
dudes, and Vending or the math bats had turned into kind of like a chore
Well,
to
actually,
make it work.
Well, it was not just that. If you remember correctly, when you left, we were kind of in limbo anyway. I think we only ever played 3 shows after you left. And it
All at the patio, opening up for.
No. After Chris left, when we had a 5-man lineup for a short amount of time.
Okay.
And we ended up playing like 3 shows that I can think of with the 5-man lineup. But yeah, I just remember you being somewhat disgruntled with things in general, and maybe you weren't being able to play what you wanted.
Well,
as loud as you wanted
that
to,
was
or
an entire
whatever.
life change, working
Right.
at IBM and living in Indianapolis and then quitting there and going to college at Ball State.
Right.
It was all good.
Yeah.
That's the same. That's the same for me because I lived in Indianapolis and played with Bramble Grit, and that's really where I learned to play drums. But then when I went to college in Bloomington, I couldn't be in Bramble Grit in Indianapolis and also in Modern Vending in Muncie.
Right.
So, and Duncan has been my best friend since the 7th or 8th grade. So when when Steve left and they asked me to join that band, then these guys became like, my best friends. So
Right.
it was easy. It was so much easier to play, and there wasn't as much direction in the way I played when I was in Modern Vending as well.
Okay, so on the Black Brittle Frisbee,
I'm on.
You-
I'm
That's
in
a
both
picture
you're on both bands with
Yeah.
both bands.
of the right there.
Uh-huh.
This building right
Here,
here.
let me zoom on this with my video camera.
I know you can't see this.
Put it on the webpage.
We're on the webpage.
All right, so
Webpage.
That's the
Someone-
what you probably don't realize, and I didn't really realize until I looked at this picture. But
Oh, yeah.
all these buildings that are connected, the No Bar went under all of them. It went under. It started. The entrance of Repeat Performance would have been right there, and then behind it was the No Bar. But the No Bar extended, or at least the hidden parts of the basement, stretched basically almost the whole block.
Let me see.
all right, so
That's a long. Jesus, it was that long?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long club there.
All right, so back to
right, okay, so how long was it after you moved to Muncie? Did you guys work on Black Brittle Frisbee, or did you work on that before you moved to Muncie? Do you remember? Because that was the first time you recorded in the studio, right?
Yeah.
It was within the same year, I think. 87, right?
yeah.
Ish.
And Steve was
sounds right.
Steve was there.
Yes,
He
Steve
came
was
back.
He came
recording.
down and hung out and stuff.
He lived here. He worked at the
Yeah.
ice plant.
But he didn't play on it.
No.
No, it was me.
So are you the only person that shows up twice on that album?
Oh, yeah, maybe. It's my album.
I own this thing.
I had the #1 test pressing for that.
I gave. I
Was
don't know
Vess
why I
on
did
it
it, but
twice?
yeah.
This was on it twice?
Is he on twice?
Jot, and was he into the tourist seats?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
He will be in a year or so, but
I don't remember him being in the Datura Seeds.
yeah.
Yeah, he was. A little
He's
bit.
in there after they recorded the album. He joined the band, so he's in the video for S&P 69, but I don't think he's on the recording for it. And then we saw him live a few times with Best too.
Okay, so Black Brittle Frisbee was before the single, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Because the songs that were on Black Brittle Frisbee were written before I joined the band. So I joined the band and learned the drum parts,
Mhm.
and then we wrote the song, Kindle, and the single together.
Right.
That's right.
Chris was in Modern Vending from the start, right?
No.
Or he wasn't?
No.
Well, okay, when Big Black played the No Bar the first time,
Right.
we weren't there because
Who's we?
I was
Math Badge.
Math Badge
because
for-
we had a
Yeah,
show
we
that
played
night
that night.
Right.
somewhere else. So you guys didn't open for them,
For like
minus
5
Chris,
people
at
on
that
this-
show, right?
No. No.
Okay.
They had played at least one, if not 2 or 3 shows. He played at that party.
So, I'll tell you how it started.
No,
I was
no.
I was at home, and Janie and Steve Schmidt came over, and they're like, "Hey, let's form a band." And it's like, they had to talk me into it, but it didn't take very long. And they're like, "Duncan will be our singer," and you hadn't even asked him yet. He was already in the band.
Couldn't they just say chicks and beer?
So we went to repeat performance where Duncan was working, and
They asked
he
me.
started singing right away. There was no music.
Yeah, I just started, walked across the street, kept singing. Everybody was like, "Oh, that was pretty cool." We're like, "Hey, let's call ourselves Ape Disobedience Factor."
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
And,
I'm sorry, what was that?
Ape Disobedience Factor.
So
Well, that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
there was
Ladies and gentlemen, the hardest working band in the land.
Ape Disobedience
But
Factor.
Duncan and I had played in a band, a one-off band that was for a benefit called the Kings of Gush.
We were in the Kings of Gush. That was
Okay, now wait.
Uh,
MCRB was still playing.
No,
No?
we played. Well, it was no, because we stopped playing the previous year.
Okay.
So I was in a band called MCRB, the first band ever to play at the No Bar. I was also in the last band. That's my claim to fame. So yeah, so I wasn't playing at that time with anyone else.
But the No Bar, we had it was like new bands, and they had to do like 5 songs. It was like a contest or something. And that's when that was the last time. Or did we play that? I don't remember whether we did something for that or that was with the Fuzzy Warbles. And then right after that is when we
contest thing?
after we did the contest.
And we changed our name.
Yeah,
like right away.
We changed the name right away. It was not Ape Disobedience Factor very long.
Yeah, ADF wasn't around.
Yeah, it was not.
And then we
was
played
the
a
main-
dog's birthday party. That was pretty. That was a really good. That was a really good show.
I think that's the show I was thinking of.
Shante, the dog.
Yes.
Shante, we played.
He's in somebody's living room.
Oh, sorry. We played for the dog. Birthday party. Oh, okay. Come back.
All right, yeah.
Woo!
Okay, so in Muncie, predominantly when you played, it was at the No Bar, right? You played there approximately how many times? Just wild guess.
20?
Really, that many?
No, probably.
10.
For for one reason or another.
We
Right.
played there
You
once a
know.
month for at least 2 years.
And you
Once
opened for
every
some of the
other
national
week.
acts that came through, right? Did you guys open for Big Black or did we? The second time.
The second time,
Was that the explosion?
Yeah, the
Yes.
fireworks
time
that
we
choked us all out of
George
there.
fucking Evangelist.
I think we must have opened for him because
Sorry, George.
we opened up for Big Black the second time they came through.
Okay. All right, that's what I was, and also Pussy Galore, right?
We,
Yeah.
we,
Who opened up for Rollins?
I don't remember who
It
opened
wasn't
for
us.
Hank came through, but I don't know.
Hank.
Yeah, you know, you call him Hank.
Af-
Hank Rollins.
After the Pussy Galore show, did they not stay at your house, or at least they came over, or
They did
they
stay
stayed
at our house. They stayed at
a
our
couple
house.
times.
okay?
All
And-
the bands stayed at our house.
And did they have some special type of water filtration I'd heard about?
Oh,
No.
are you talking about when the mayor dyed the river green?
No.
We took.
No,
John
no, I'm
and-
talking about the story about somebody drinking something through somebody's panties.
Ooh, ooh,
Saddle sores.
spaghetti.
Now,
Shit, man.
I have a pretty good memory for some stuff, okay, and I'm going to bring it up. I mean, you're not going to escape this room before we
Wait.
talk about
Bring
you
it
eating
up.
White Castles
Saddle
off of my
sores?
crotch.
No, that's not what he's talking
no,
about.
no. He's
No.
talking about something else. Completely.
Right.
Let's put it this way.
And
It
I
might
wanna
be
hear.
somebody turning red at the table.
So give me the story. Give me the deets on that.
The D.
Yes.
I wasn't involved in it, so I just
I wasn't-
watched it go down.
I was there. I don't even think I was in the band. I was there. I saw it happen.
You were part of it, weren't you?
yeah.
Were
he
you
was
holding
I was
it?
there. I was
you were-
definitely there.
You were part of it. So it's like to be in this club. I can't do this, Julie.
No. Don't.
Julie, it's okay, Julie. I won't divulge their secret.
And that's how it happened.
All right, give me the short version.
No.
There was a club. You had to do something to get in it, and only a couple people were willing to do that. And they might be sitting at this table.
Yeah, when I said I was involved in it, I did it.
I was the other one.
It was the two of
And
us.
then I had to give him
You and I weren't.
I had to give him my Danny Bonaducci album.
That's right. That's right. I earned that, Danny Bonaducci.
You did earn that.
You bribed him with a Danny Bonaducci.
This is the sort of thing I was afraid was going to happen. It's also the sort of thing that mars a career in education.
You should have heard the shit I had to cut out of Bill Starkey's.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Oh, no, you can't. No, the unedited one of that. Gene and Paul ever die.
That is crazy, Tony, that you remember that, because I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah,
literally in.
That was weird.
I mean, probably since it happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't remember it all.
That might have been
The
this.
vending house was
Nothing good.
a lot of
happened.
wacko
Nothing
things.
good happened in
Nothing
there.
good happened there.
Didn't somebody in that house put like a box of shit or something under somebody's bed and
No, toenails. We kept our toenails.
There was the
Boxes.
toenail.
or a dead bird or something
No.
like?
There was
Dead
a
bat.
dead
I
bat.
killed a bat with a
Wrist
slingshot.
rocket. You saved my life with that. That bat was coming from my jugular.
Oh yeah, that was a weird night.
All right,
He
this
was
is what
trying
I
to get into
remember.
my awesome hair at the time.
This is what I remember. There was a guy that hung out with you guys that wasn't really
Part of it.
like you, but he hung out with you and he's kind of jockish, kind of. I don't remember his name, but I just remember that people used to blow him shit all the time, and him and Nordhoff would blow each other shit all the time. And somebody put either a dead animal or a dead something under, like between his mattress and his box spring or something,
Never
and
heard
just
of
left
that
it there to
story.
rot.
Never heard it.
I don't remember that. at all.
I don't. Yeah, that's
I've
not.
never heard anything like that before.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
Because
you
nobody
whisper
ever.
it?
She was kind of short.
Can you whisper it?
No, I don't remember his name.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying. I don't
Big
remember this
Steve?
person's name.
Not Big Steve.
No, this
No,
guy
he
was
wasn't
this guy was kind of smallish. No, it wasn't like short. He was just smallish. He was shorter than me,
Okay.
and he had kind of a jock's or ex-jock's attitude.
I really
And he
don't know. I would
lived
tell
either
you.
lived in your house or Nordhoff's house.
Mallory?
Nordhoff would make fun of him all the time. I think he hung out with Mallory.
Yeah, it was Mallory. George Mallory. Sorry, George.
I think
don't know. don't know about
I think
this.
he hung out with George Mallory.
I don't know.
But anyway, that was the person I remember. Somebody got mad at somebody, and it involved him.
It wasn't the. Remember when you got attacked?
Wife.
You-
Well, that happened.
Oh.
That happened to us
Blake.
too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean they just ended up kicking our car, but
They broke Blake's cheekbone. Punched
Smashed
you
their door.
going in.
No,
the
I didn't punch me.
They didn't punch you?
Mm-mm.
Janie grabbed the bat.
You
Okay.
did. You
Literally.
came back out.
Janie scooted in the door and went for the bat, man. I'm going, what the fuck just happened? Where's my Coke? My Coca-Cola.
okay. Let's back up just a fraction here.
There's
So
enough of it.
so we're talking about Muncie, which is not known as a sophisticated town.
The only
correct?
place I've ever been in a fight.
Okay, so while you guys were there, you guys probably represented a form of music that a large number of people going to that college did not like. So what you're saying
Oh,
is
but about
It got
five.
crazy.
Yeah.
It gets crazy outside of the
Right.
No Bar on a regular basis.
so
Good
did you
townies
get
and-
hassled regularly?
Yes, regularly, like, people would call us the F word. I won't say
You know what
Freaks.
though?
Freaks.
It got less and less.
Yeah,
Did
my
it really?
boys
Oh, yeah.
stole the sign at the end. They
Because
did
you
all that
know
shit.
the whole grunge thing was starting in the late '80s, kind of
There were some stories in that freaking Daily News too that were just
crazy.
like those guys were doing stupid things at their show, and then people would show up all
Yeah.
riled up, because we were wearing women's clothing and
I was wearing.
And we had a lot.
Duncan was
and the
wearing.
abortion.
I was wearing fishnets.
You had that dress on though.
We
no?
did
It was,
get-
a,
we
it was
did-
a live birth.
Yeah, that got
It
us
was
a lot of
live birth,
notoriety.
Yeah, they
Is that
were-
called
I'm
live
sorry.
birth?
Let's touch on that a second. The live birth. Fill me in on that.
Is it called the
Okay.
live birth?
Well,
It's a
and then you
baby?
hung
It's
the
a-
baby.
It's a doll.
So early on, Duncan liked to engage in shenanigans and a lot of showmanship.
Right.
And
right?
tomfoolery.
So we always did something different. It was never this, well, hardly ever the same.
Never the same. These guys would come up, Mark and Chris.
Actually, and Scott Nordoff, man.
They would
he
come up with these
he needs to get
ideas,
some credit.
and then
He
they-
Yeah,
definitely
he was-
did.
he was-
He was our stage manager.
They'd come
and
up
prop
with,
guy.
they'd come up with ideas, and I love these guys so much. Actually, I just was starved for attention, and they would say, "Hey Duncan, this is a good idea. Why don't you wrap yourself with cellophane and insert like Spam in between each layer, and then wear a aluminum foil crown, and we'll have a party."
Hey Duncan, let's make a skirt made of hot dogs.
Sausage
A
skirt.
How about if we
sausage skirt.
carry in on
That
a
was it.
spit
Yeah,
and
what if we
barbecue
carry
your
on a
skin?
spit?
Jockey club.
Yeah, at the Jockey Club.
And we had the
Good times.
dancing girls
We
behind
played
the
the last
screens.
weekend at
Yeah.
the Jockey Club. One of
Yeah,
the
that's
last
a good
shows
one.
at the
We-
Jockey
well,
Club.
But back, Mark,
did
back
was-
to the birth.
So,
Yeah, back to the birth.
So I think this was the night after we recorded our cassette, our first recording,
Good clean fun.
Good Clean Fun, at our friend Mandy's house, who lived
with Ron Sinovitz, yeah.
And Ron recorded us, and then the next night was the party. So we had a song called Spies, which was actually a Fuzzy Warble song about a kidnapping of a baby. And so we
Yeah,
wanted
fun.
to kind of act that whole song out, right?
Right.
So Duncan was a pregnant woman, and Scott
Man,
Nor-
they made Jello and cut up bananas and all this
right,
other
right.
stuff.
We did
Right,
beans,
so we had a
put
baby
beans
doll
and-
that we got at the Muncie Mission, I think.
Oh yeah, right. Red-headed doll, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was red after.
Afterwards,
birth.
after the birth, it was red-headed.
Had like a licorice whip umbilical.
Yeah. The
So
liquid
Duncan
was-
could shoot.
Yeah, so I could grab it and shoot it.
So it was great because we had a strobe going on. It was in the basement. It was like,
People wanted
It
to
looked-
fight us
yeah.
afterwards.
but we'll get there in a sec.
Okay.
So Scott Nordoff was the doctor.
In an IBM lab coat. I forgot about the lab coats too.
And Dave Dollar was the kidnapper.
Right.
And so Scott delivers the baby. Duncan gnaws through the umbilical cord, and then Scott starts waving this thing around. It's covered in red Jello, basically. And he hits one of our friends over the head with it. And then I don't know if Dollar ever stole the child or not.
Someone hit the floor and then the lights came on. Or something.
And everyone was covered in placenta.
Everybody had placenta on. Not as much as when we played as the Yellow Jaundice Babies with a big boil, a 9-foot boil. A 9-foot boil. It was covered with, it was in custard and it was in all
Mashed
kinds
potatoes.
of mashed potatoes. And they smashed it and it got all over. I had to drive home in my underwear from Indianapolis from Muncie to Indianapolis, and I barely made it
I
alive.
can tell you, I was not at. That was before I was in the band, so I wasn't at that show. But as I would go up to Muncie, and you meet more and more people who are around Modern Vending and fans of Modern Vending, and then just became friends with the band and all the. Everybody claimed to have been at that party and at that birth. I mean, everybody in Muncie says they were there.
The one thing I remember was there was water on the fucking floor,
We
so
were
we had to actually
electrocuted.
stand on
2x4.
2x4s. And every time Mark and I would hit each other, or Duncan would run into somebody in one of multiple shows in Muncie where I know I actually was getting shocked on a regular basis.
Sorry.
Dude, when we did that one show at Big Steve's house with the rugby cats, and
Right.
that whole thing of keg beer was like flowing across the floor. Do you remember? I mean, I was actually seeing stars and shit. We were getting shocked so much.
The band stars or
No.
He had a whole different show going on in his head.
So yeah, some people weren't happy with us after the baby was born, and there were some
But when did we really get down and make this big? Because we get.
Oh, now you guys got
wait
beat
a
up
second.
after this show?
No.
We should walk through the Ron Sinovitz years.
Well, I just want to say something about the baby because
Okay.
we put a lot of effort and
And love.
a lot of love. We baked a big thing
Trash
of the
bag.
Andy
Jell-O.
Kahn and Courtney Cox prepared the baby placenta.
The placenta, it was like in this big tub, and then we stuck the baby in, put like beans and baked beans and green beans and string beans and
Bananas.
It's a 3-bean
bananas.
baby.
A 3-bean casserole. There was a lot of beans in there for a placenta-esque.
I mean, more
Texture.
beans than most placenta.
A third of more placenta than most, or beans than most placentas. And we really got into it. And I left the show. I came back home because I put it in the freezer. So I ran back home and I wrapped some towels around my waist. And then I took the baby out of the freezer and I wrapped the baby in a cloth around my stomach, around a bag. And so when it started to melt, my stomach would get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you could see the like pregnancy happening. You could see the whole thing. And then, so when it was time, I laid on my back with my feet in the air, and that's when Scott Nordoff came through, put his hands between my legs, ripped open the bag, and then gush. Everywhere. And then a guy threatened to kill me because his wife just had a baby. And he was,
I remember that.
yeah, the guy had me by the throat. He was like, my wife just had a baby, I'm gonna kill you. But nothing happened
Bank
after that.
Ron ran him out.
Yeah, they ran him out of town. So I survived. I guess.
Well, I mean, we all know that's pretty much what childbirth is like. So I can see why he was offended. I mean, lots of beans, bananas.
Bananas. Mush bananas. Yeah.
Baby's usually frozen for a while.
They're resuscitated through warmth from the male's bulbous tummy section.
Where did we get the picture of the baby
Hanging.
for Good Clean Fun?
That's the same baby.
That's the same
That was,
baby.
the same
that was the
baby?
next day.
Out in the backyard, yeah.
That's the next day out in the backyard from Mandy's basement. Right?
That tape was recorded courtesy of Arandis Tequila, if I recall.
Oh, yes.
Clear and gold.
Both
And
kinds.
some shitty vodka.
That's not
Is
shitty
it
vodka.
tequila?
No, not
Oh, we
tequila.
had it,
There
right.
was like Conchaca vodka or something like that. It was
Conchaca
terrible. I don't know.
Conchaca.
I swear to God, that's what it's called.
Kamchatka.
Whatever.
That's like
Sounds
a
like
risk.
it's got a rock
It's like
in
a
it.
risk when you go through Camp Chaka. You have to go the fucking
Camp
my
Chaka.
God damn it.
Camp Chaka. That's the camp run by the guy from Land of the Lost,
Right,
right?
Chaka. That's Chaka. That was Chaka. Oh, they're taking a break.
No. So tell me about some of the other wacky shit that you did during some of the shows.
Remember when we put him on a spit?
Yeah, and
That was
someone
painful, wasn't it?
That
Someone
hurt
brushed-
like hell
brushed
because
Chuck.
I was telling my daughter about that.
they
and
had,
she just
they
shook
had
her
tied my wrists like they would have tied like I don't know.
pig.
a
You were.
pig.
He was tied to a 4x4.
I was tied to
Literally.
a 4x4
With
my,
real rope.
My wrists were bleeding because they were like, I was over my head, and then I had.
Your
you
feet
can't
were
see
tied.
You can't see this on right now, but yeah, I had my feet tied. I was.
It looked like,
stretched
here's
out.
what it looked like. It looked like if you looked at a movie from the 50s where cannibals were carrying
Right,
someone
right.
to
That's
a
exactly
feast. That's
how
what he
it was
was
supposed
tied
to
up
look.
like that.
Exactly.
Thanks to Scott Nordoff.
Yeah.
That would hurt.
And then and then I heard someone, I think George said, well, this is fucking heavy. And I was like, I know it's heavy because you're carrying me 4 feet off the ground. Kamchatka vodka is true. So anyways, I got to the stage and they untied my wrists, which were obviously bruised and bloodied. And then we went on with the show.
No. You got basted with barbecue sauce.
Oh,
and you were
by-
squealing at the
by-
top of his lungs
by
because it was
Will.
burning his bleeding wrists.
Because of Will and his brother who came out with wrestling masks and played with trumpets or something. Did you come out with trumpets?
Yeah, of course.
Guitar solos and some trumpets.
No, Will was it was the show we played at the No Bar that
Yep.
was filmed, and
Right.
you wore the gold lame pants.
That was the Dead Milkman show.
Yeah,
Right.
we opened for the Dead Milkman.
Right.
You opened
But
the Dead Milkman
Will,
at the
Will
No
was
Bar?
hiding. You were like hiding in the closet
Yep.
that was on stage, and
Right.
then at
Tiny.
some point he jumped out and
Did a guitar
guitar
solo with a wrestler mask
Yeah.
on and like a poncho. And I swear to God, your brother had a trumpet and was like
Yeah.
busting. The 3 is the magic number. We were like, he was playing.
Oh yeah,
the-
yeah. It's my trumpet.
Yeah, it's your trumpet. We're playing 3 is the magic number, and that's what we always closed the shows out with. Because that was the jam.
Because you could make it go for 10 or 15 minutes if you wanted to.
So yeah, so we had that. We had several things, but the one I was noted for probably the most was the sausage skirt. And
That's at the Jockey Club in Cincinnati.
we'll take 5 minutes and then
Recreate it.
Recreate it, yeah, live.
Are we taking 5 minutes? Why are we
There
taking
was a
5
lot of
minutes?
hot dogs.
Yeah.
I need
That was
something
a
to
lot of
drink. I'm
work.
out of sodas.
Recollect all the various national acts that you played with, and if you recall anything weird or funny or special about any of them that apparently doesn't involve panties.
That's going to be a problem. I mean, you know.
Hey, they weren't my pants.
I heard whose they were.
I don't remember whose they were.
Nordhoff's.
Yikes.
That was take 2 steps back, then go.
Because I don't know if the story was she left them behind and they became part of the house festivities.
Oh.
Yeah, I heard they were left behind by one of the girls in Pussy Galore.
Right,
Left them behind,
right. Yeah,
and
they were.
the club
As a
had to
little
do
present.
with.
It's not a club. It's
They
a
were-
duo.
They weren't.
They tried to get it to be a club.
I mean,
Nobody was
we
joining.
just figured once we did it, everybody would line up. We were wrong.
The rest of us are just going, oh my God.
Do you still have my Danny Bonaducci album?
Oh yeah,
All right.
yeah, for sure.
Duncan!
I remember.
He's
He's being-
tinkling.
I'll tell you.
Oh.
I'll tell you a non-Duncan story. The only fight I ever got in was in Muncie, and I went to the nearest like village pantry from your house, and I got like.
I was with you, right?
No, I was. Oh yeah. And remember
I remember
Weren't you
exactly
wearing-
what happened, dude. The guy working behind the counter did nothing. He stood there and watched what
Yeah.
was going on, and you called him out. You were like, "Aren't you going to call 911? Aren't you going
Yeah.
to do something?" And he just stood there with his arms crossed while these 2 dudes kept threatening to beat us up.
They were like, and they jumped out of their car. They were like, "You fucking ripped me off, dude!" And we didn't know what they were talking
I
about.
didn't think they were talking to us at first.
Yeah.
And then they didn't actually end up hitting us or anything, but as they ran out, they kicked my car. Remember
Yeah.
that? They kicked the door and then they took off.
But that's not the one I'm talking about.
So you got twice.
I got an actual fisticuffs.
Oh,
because
do
I
tell.
went
You
in
did?
by myself, and I was getting just a sandwich. It was after a show at the No Bar, and I was getting
I
a sandwich.
vaguely remember
Yeah,
you coming back.
because I had to
all
run home.
Freaked out.
And I bought a Mountain Dew when they were in glass bottles, and this car pulled up, 4 guys, one guy jumped out and was like, "You fucking ripped me off, dude, you ripped me off." And I was like, hey, what now? And I thought maybe he'd been at our show earlier and was super upset or something. But then I realized in a second that guy could not have been at the show. And then he came up and swung at me, and then I took the glass bottle out. I was going to hit him upside the head because there were 3 other guys getting out the car behind him.
Sure.
And when I pulled the bottle, it just went behind me. I swung it back and it smashed against that wall in the side of the parking lot. And then we were on the ground, and I got them on the ground and got up and ran and did cut through yards because they were driving around looking for me. And the first person I saw when I got back to the house was you, and I was like, they're coming after. And then you came in and Janie came in. She was like, what's going on? I go, what's these guys? And then Chris went out on the front porch and looked, and they didn't come by the house. But I was totally freaked out because I didn't know what was going on. It's not as bad as I don't know if you guys remember Dave Bostwick, but Dave Bostwick was in Scratch. He was in that Phil Trakoff band. He played saxophone in that Phil Trakoff band, and he came up for the last No Bar show, and he got his jaw broken outside the No Bar that night.
Jesus.
Really?
Yeah.
The things you don't see or hear when you're inside all crazed out of your mind.
That's like when Ben Minkler.
Close that door.
The mysterious Ben Minkler.
Ben Minkler was working in the basement or in the No Bar on the stage, and he had paint fumes and all kinds of stuff going on. And he had consumed half a bottle of cough syrup. And he was working, he was doing this thing. Then he's like, I better go outside. So he goes upstairs, opens the door, goes outside. The sun's coming up, and there's all these gifted children coming off of a bus, and he thought he had become a super genius. And he thought all these people were like his disciples. And then he went back downstairs and called it a day.
Wasn't his dad the head of the art department?
That's what I remember about Ben Minkler.
All right, let's run through a list of some of the bands that you guys opened up for, and tell any maybe stories that might be connected.
Can I do my sausage?
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Okay, that was really important to me. I had this great idea to wear a sausage skirt, sort of like a kilt, that would look beautiful, like, you know, just like I went to different meaderies, and I'd say, sir, do you have a long like kielbasa sheet that I could put stuffed meat into, so it's a long string like a tube, you know, can I get that from you? And they'd be like, son, you're at the wrong place. So I got these, I said, fuck it, I can't find these kielbasa holders anywhere, so I said, I'm just going to string together hot dogs.
Yeah.
And so I got a belt.
Yarn.
Got some yarn. I looped the yarn around the belt, and I just
You
started,
wore it.
Well, I started,
Yeah.
I wore it, and I started sewing up the hot dogs into like strings that go from my hip bone all the way
This
down.
is actually in.
This is in the
In the
back room.
jockey
In the
club.
back room of the jockey
This is
club.
the back room
Yeah.
of the jockey club.
Yeah, I was helping you.
Yeah,
string
well,
those hot dogs.
so
The skirt had
I remember
a freshness
going-
state.
Looking in there going, oh my god.
So I think I did have underwear underneath the whole thing, but I had like a row of hot dogs tied together, sewn together with yarn, and I had it all the way around my body, hip to floor. I could swing and do a little like a sausage little like the old ladies used to do, like the
Oh, yeah.
Sashay?
Like a hoop,
Sashay
yeah.
and
Like a hoop skirt.
like a hoop
Yeah,
shirt,
yeah.
and I could like turn around and like
Twirl.
Twirl is the word I was looking for. Twirl. And
Well, but Liz was there, and Liz also painted you.
right. They had this great idea to cover me in like white powder, and so people were squirting a baby powder all over me, and then
You smelled great.
Thank you. And I had this idea. I remember this old show when I was little of these supposed like island voodoo guys are running after these
Banana
guys.
splits.
Banana splits. running after these guys. You know, running through like over the water and stuff like that. And these guys
Was
with
that
the
Mystery Island?
that was Mystery Island, and
Yeah.
the guy had he had spears, and he was coming after them, and they barely escaped death, and the whole idea was
But they didn't have hot dogs.
No, they didn't have hot dog skirts on. But I wanted to embody this kind of feeling that I remember from the cinema. My TV. The cinema. So I wrapped the hot dogs all around me, and then I had them outline my spine and my rib cage and
the bones
jaw and the bones on my arms, like I was a skeleton.
Yeah, black.
The xiphoid process.
The xiphoid process was nice and chilled and a little boned up, and then I wanted so I was like this guy, and then later on, I was like, this is probably extremely racist. I shouldn't be doing this. But that was about 10 years later. I saw pictures of myself, and I'm like, a white guy with white powder, black lines of afro wig,
and a sausage skirt.
This sausage skirt, the least offensive part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he was just trying to tap into the spirit of the banana split.
So I was definitely had no malice or anything like that.
Tapping into something.
And so, but the thing that started happening was our band, we like to, rock and roll, do our thing, la 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 la, and I was like jumping from side to side, and then a little pit started forming out in front of the stage. And I'd watch them, and one guy would just go flying through the air to hit the wall, and one guy would go flying the other way and hit the wall. What had been happening is while I was shimmying and all that stuff, the hot dogs started releasing and going onto the floor in the pit, and people were slipping on the hot dogs. They were slipping all over the hot dogs that had come off the base of my skirt, and but that's how we did it back then.
Didn't he end up in a tuck at the end of that? End of that show?
No, the end of the tuck
That was with the digits.
The digits, and I still have a story with that guy. I'll tell it some other time.
What other time you gonna tell him?
So we're not doing this again.
Next week.
We'll be back.
I'll be back.
Season 2. You want to talk about the national acts?
Yeah, the various bands that you played with that you met along the way.
Well, I mean, a lot of them we didn't play with. We met.
Always August was one of our
a lot of them
favorites.
we didn't even know who they were.
Yeah.
Right. Always August.
They just stayed at our house.
Yeah.
Always August. They were hippies. They stayed at our house. We played ping pong. We played frisbee
We
with
played
them.
yard
We
bowling.
played
Yard
yard bowling. That was a big one. And they just sat around and smoked pot all day. And then
Ate
they
falafel.
didn't shower.
And they didn't shower. And then they would go to the No Bar.
Just like Rob Zombie.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
So then they go to the No Bar, and then they play their set for about 15-20 minutes, and I loved every one of those guys, but their band sucked.
Oh, it's awful.
They were on SST.
They were on SST, and SST stood for suck.
They were so
Suck.
nice. They
They were the nicest guys
in the
there.
world.
And I hope you cut this part out, because I actually I really liked them as people.
We kind of stayed with them.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
stayed with them when
yeah.
they came out, and they had rats running around all
Yeah,
over.
they were
the-
squatting in an abandoned home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they had
The
chickens.
kid was crapping in the bucket on the porch of the house next door. What's he doing? Oh, that's their
That's
bathroom.
for doors.
Yeah.
Remember?
All right, and
We did not stay with them. We stayed with
I know.
Joe.
In the same neighborhood.
It
was,
just a couple blocks away.
Just under the
But it was
bridge.
a legitimate home.
And the drummer of the Always August lived at the top of the stairs with the bed sheets, and he had a carton of milk with his picture on it that was from missing. That he showed me and said "kid missing," and it was him from like 15 years ago. And he was like, "Look, they're still looking for me."
It's true, man.
That
That dude had maggots in his dreads.
When you were out there, you weren't touring. Did you guys ever tour?
Oh, no,
Well, we
tried. I tried
We
my
had a
balls
2-week,
off.
2-day.
Can I speak on this?
Yes.
I've done a lot of stuff with record labels and this and that and all this kind of stuff. Everything you can think of, from like stuffing letters to like putting paper postage on shit and getting names and numbers and writing out one sheets for people and doing all this stuff. But the hardest thing I ever had to do was try to put a tour together. And that became pretty obvious right from the beginning when the booker in the greater region was in the middle of the world, the Midwest. Botch Billions was like the smartest, awesomest booker of all time. We played a show at the Cubby Bear, and we were first, and there was about 12 people there, and we got paid like $200, and that was a lot of money. I mean, he could put together shows, and you get paid. So it's like, I asked him, I was like, please fax me over this golden book so I can flip through the pages and call these people and get this golden money that I thought was, that they should be giving to us. And so I call, I'd flip through, I'd start with the A's, and I'd go down and say,
So he sent it to you.
He sent me, he actually sent me the whole thing, the golden book. With all the pages, everything, and notes and everything. I mean, this thing was like the Bible of. It wasn't the one that they found in Chicago. This was.
That night. It was at the Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah, that was.
Their manager or something left his
notebook. He took it and gave it away.
Yeah.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Was it because they were such Was it because they were such assholes? Was that what the deal or something?
I don't know what
it was,
is,
but this was
like
a
that.
different golden
That's the one that
book.
had Slayer's. Like
We'd have everything.
Oh yeah, like Bob Mould, all these fucking phone numbers in there.
Mine just had club owners and club owners and bookers and everything that you could want to put a tour together. So I looked at the map, I checked it out, I was like, all right. So we were starting from the Midwest, and I was like, okay, our first show will go like to Ohio or something and play like in Cincinnati. And so I looked up all the numbers and everything through Cincinnati, and I'd start calling people, and no one would ever call me back. And I would call like every other day saying, this is Duncan from Modern Vending. Will you please return my phone call? We're trying to put together an East Coast tour, and your help would be deeply appreciated. And I guess that didn't work. Because I really tried, and I had all these fucking legitimate numbers. Like any idiot could have gone through that book and put together a 2-week tour that would have like been for Blondie or something. I had everybody's phone numbers, and Botch was just this beautiful person who gave me all this stuff, and I just fucked it off. All from my parents' bedroom. And I don't know why. I don't know why it was so bad, but that's the hardest thing you have to do in the rock and roll business, is try to book a tour, from my perspective.
All right.
That's great.
Let's move forward a little bit. You put out the single, the 45, before the album, right?
No.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kindle.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you put that out yourself, or did somebody else? Was that on Mike
It was
Sheep's
on
label?
Ajax.
Ajax Records.
Okay.
From Chicago.
They're based out of Chicago.
Right. We were number 2. We were the second release. The Anti-Scene was the first release, 45, and then our record was number 2, right?
Kindle was
Kindle was number 2, and then our record was like number 4 or something. Yeah. It was,
Okay.
It was all early
Tim
on.
Adams.
Tim Adams.
Steve Albini didn't produce
He
that
had
one, right?
nothing to do with any of all
Paul
that.
produced the album.
And the single.
No, the single was.
Johnny produced the single.
Yeah.
Remember we
What,
recorded
one
it?
bad-
We
We
recorded,
recorded
it
it
in
in
Hit City at Brickley's place, but Johnny did the engineering.
No, but
No,
we
it was at
we
the
recorded
Dealsters.
at the Dealsters
Dealsters.
house. The
Oh,
guy,
shit, I totally forgot about that car.
Yeah.
The dude that choked that other guy at the
Battle of the
Battle of the Bands.
But he did not. That dude didn't quite get what we were trying to do.
I talked to him on the phone. I was like calling this
Well,
guy,
we knew him
Jeff
from high
Deal.
school.
I knew him from high school. I call him up, hey Jeff Deal, this is Duncan. Do you remember me? No, I have no idea who you are. But we started talking, and then he was like, the best vocals I could possibly think of are of Journey's, of Steve Perry from Journey. And I was like, I don't really sing like that. I sing more like, I don't really sing. It's more like of a feeling of aggression, and and he's like, oh yeah, I think I know where you're coming from. And then I would say, well, what about the drums? What do you think they would sound like? And he's like, we get these huge kick drum sounds, like you're filling an arena. And they were going to be so huge, and the snare drums, like you're playing on a 50-foot snare drum, and it's like going to be so boss and big and heavy. And I was like, our drummer doesn't really like that stuff. And I said, but can we record it in your studio if we bring someone else in to engineer? It's like, well, I usually don't do that, but since you mentioned Paul Mahern, which I did at the time, you can come and use my studio, and then
pay for it.
Pay for
Not
it.
Use it.
Pay for it,
Rent
and
it.
then get the fuck out of my house. It was his
His
studio
garage.
was in his garage, basically, or in the backyard.
It's a fine little
It
studio.
was a fine little studio, and he treated it as fine. He just like locked himself into his studio and watched us through the sliding glass doors.
Shaking his head a lot.
Yeah, going like that. He was like, it was perfect. Yeah, sorry.
So that's where you recorded the single.
Yeah.
That's the single. Sorry,
Okay.
I rambled.
No, that's good. That's good. Details, good. And then after that came the album. Was the album also on Ajax?
Yes.
And that was produced by Steve Albini, right?
No, that was Paul.
Why did I think it was?
I don't know.
Because you're an idiot.
No, I mean,
I know.
seriously,
I
I
mean,
always
I know.
thought
Did
that
you
it
know?
was. Yes.
I mean
No,
that,
the yellow tape was
I mean-
Albini.
I don't, Tony.
What's that?
It never came out.
It never
They had
came
not
out.
put
I'm
it
sorry,
out.
Tony.
No, wait a minute.
Yes.
So, but you did record with him at one point, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yes.
Okay,
So
well, that's
that
why I
stuff we
thought.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
No, the
well,
We never put it
album
out.
was recorded with Hit City's mobile equipment in a storefront in Muncie.
It was.
And it wasn't
was
even
a
that.
fucking- it
Paul went
wasn't
up
that.
and got that 8-track ADAT
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
DAT
yeah.
machine. There were 2 in the state.
Right.
That's where Jeff Green was living.
And
Paul
Liz.
goes
Jeff
up
and
and
Jeff
gets
and
this
Liz.
machine, an
Right.
8-track recorder, and says, let's do this stuff. We ended up doing it in Liz's Dive in downtown Muncie.
Exactly.
And it was literally like
A
an old
storefront.
storefront.
You're right.
And
The vocals
halfway,
sounded.
yeah. We ended up not doing the vocals there and
They
had to
sounded
do
good.
them at Paul's
Did 'em at
house.
Paul's house,
But
yeah.
we couldn't. The machine broke, and Paul couldn't get a remember that? And
Yeah, yeah.
it took 6 months to get
Right.
the vocals
Yeah.
done for this, and literally. Sorry, Tim Adams. I mean, literally. By the time we were done recording that album, none of the distribution houses were taking vinyl, and we had already had the vinyls.
We did,
It
vinyl.
was-
We wanted a CD. I was like, Tim, put a CD out of this because no one's taking vinyl.
Right.
He's like, I don't know. It's still the prices are kind of iffy on.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the-
I mean, it would have been. It was
it was-
incredibly expensive
Right.
to do that versus
Right.
vinyl.
But
And-
yeah,
So Tim ended up with 2,000 records.
Yeah, I got about 50 in the other room.
And
now does
those-
Ajax own that record, the rights to that record?
who no, no,
Not
we got
really.
the tape. So fuck whoever
Well,
owns the rights.
I was just gonna say, what would stop you from putting out a CD of like that and the stuff and the
Albini
single
did.
Nothing.
and the stuff that you didn't
Only
put out?
CDs don't sell anymore. We're back to vinyl.
There's some contract somewhere, I think.
There was a contract, and I had my little D that everybody made fun of, like Duncan. I had little.
Oh, that little D.
The little D, yes. That
Exactly.
little D. I
Little
didn't
D.
sign it with my penis, which I also call little D. But
It works on two
anyways,
levels.
everybody's signatures
hard.
looked pretty except for mine. I look ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, they were real pretty.
They were pretty. A lot of real pretty signatures. I remember how pretty they were. And mine looked stupid. But anyways, we sent this paper off to him, and so we have this legal binding contract, I guess, that says that he's going to pay us $1.25 per album sold, and we were going to take half the produced product and as payment, like in lieu of payment. And so I think he sold 100 LPs. And that was $1.25 each LP that we owed, that I would call him every other day and say, "Where's our money? I've got a contract right here that says you owe us $1.25 for every album you sell. So you owe up, pay up, motherfucker." I wouldn't use that language, but I would say stuff like that. And anyways, I don't know. Tim, I love you. I'm sorry.
I can tell you, I have a pretty good story about the night that we recorded those vocals. So we recorded the vocals, and we were all there. Were we all there? Mm-hmm. I mean, Duncan did most of the vocals. Then we
in the shower,
and then some of us pitched in
We
on
sat in the
backup
bedroom
vocals.
on the
Right.
bed for a while.
And it was great. But we were in Paul's house with Paul's kids and stuff.
Julie was just
Julie
going.
was and we were there late.
Right.
And then, but we were drinking. One of the things that Modern Vending did a lot is Duncan had bought in Tijuana this calf's leg.
I didn't buy it. You guys
I bought it. Yeah, I bought it.
Sorry,
Sorry, I bought it.
Me.
It was a calf's leg, a cow's leg, and seated in the bottom at where the hoof meet, there was a bottle that you could stitch it. It stitched up the cow's leg stitched up to the top of the bottle, and you wore it around your neck, and we would fill it with tequila before shows,
and we drink it from the hoof.
Drinking from the hoof, and I would take it off my shoulders, and it was like, "You want to do a hit?
Yeah.
Want to do a hit?"
And we'd share it with the other bands and stuff.
And the people who liked it the most were those Brits from
The Membranes.
The Membranes loved it. They were like, "At first we thought you were a little weird asking us to drink from a cow's hoof, but we think you're hilarious. That's awesome. You're a beautiful man. You're a beautiful man."
They were great. We went to go see them in Cincinnati. But so we had this tradition of drinking tequila, and so that night we had tequila at Paul's house, and I remember it was just getting passed around, and I drank.
You drank 3/4
I
of
drank
the bottle.
most of the bottle of tequila, and we sat for 2 hours talking, and Paul was
not about the record.
Mostly about tribalism and some weird stuff, some great stuff. But then I remember when I stood up, all the blood rushed to my head, and I was like, I'm gonna throw up in Paul's bedroom. So I hightailed it out of the house.
Down the stairs.
I didn't know where a bathroom was, but I knew how to get out of the house. And remember his big dog Solex?
Solex, yeah.
So I laid in the driveway, on the gravel driveway, and Paul I was throwing up, and then Paul brought me out a glass of water. Then you guys went to some clubs, and you came back and checked on me.
We went to the patio to see Henry Lee Summer.
And then you came back and checked on me, and you gave me a glass of water, and Solex came in over and drank my water.
And licked all your vomit off.
And licked all of the vomit off, and cleaned me up. Solex cleaned me up.
You look great.
Get me ready to go.
Good boy.
Good boy. And then so that I've never been able to drink tequila since that night. Literally, I can't even.
Yeah, that Henry Lee Summer show we went to was awesome. I don't know.
Sorry
we didn't bring it along.
Can I say something in regards to the whole vocal thing?
Sure.
To this day, man, the sweetest thing I think Modern Vending ever did is the vocals that Will put out on King of Dirt.
Oh yes. Yeah.
So
thanks.
They were sweet.
Pleasure.
They went
well.
They were very. You and I never sang in harmony like that.
We really thought it out, and it was a little cheesy, but it was good.
No, it was good.
It was good.
Paul was coaching.
Yep.
Yeah, he did some
coaching hard.
Yep.
And
he wanted me to sing on that on the Chicken Boy. He was like, "You got to do this, Will. This is what you got to do," and I couldn't sing high enough.
Right.
And so he sang this. So Paul sang the backup on Chicken Boy.
Paul the Best.
Because they were like, "You got to get this out." I was like, "Hey, you can't sing that high."
Chicken boy, my chicken boy. I love to see my chicken boy. I love the chicken boy. Chicken boy.
But it was that Paul, that chicken boy. And I couldn't hit it, and Paul's like, "Oh, I'll do
I
it."
couldn't
We're like,
hit it
"All
either.
right, I
but
guess
he
you
was
can do
like,
it."
he was
I'll
like,
do it. Just get down there and give it a little twist.
I was gonna say no, and Paul Barron goes, "I'll do it for you." Yeah, I guess.
All right, I
Yeah,
guess
so
that's
it's
a
the
good
first song
idea.
on the album. Sure,
Yeah,
I won't.
why not?
Tom Watts came and sang it.
Yeah,
as well.
Tom Watts came in. He sang. He did a song that was beautiful.
That song rocks.
We did the vocals. I don't know why we did them this way, but it was a really stupid. It was a wonderful idea that someone came up with, and we wanted the bullhorn sound of "Don't Ruin My Vacation." We wanted that. Please don't ruin
The old
my
IBM
vacation.
bullhorn.
The whole
Absolutely.
the IBM bullhorn, but we didn't have a bullhorn. So Paul suggested to walk down the street into this payphone, and then I could see him from the payphone up in the window, and he would give me the thumbs up when it was time to sing. And I was sitting in there, and I was screaming my ass off, but I couldn't hear the music or anything, so I was just screaming and screaming. And there's these guys that were standing around the phone booth going like, "Are you okay, man? Are you all right? Is everything going to be all right?" And I was just like,
Don't ruin my vacation. Pause.
Paul's good. Paul's putting the thumbs up. So that was one of the weirdest the vocals I ever did. That was very weird.
One of.
One of, yeah. And that's always August.
How many times did we play at Southgate? At least twice.
Twice.
Those were some interesting times.
Those were both good shows.
And one of them was like Big Black second to the last show, right?
It was Big
Our
Black.
last show?
Then they were going to Seattle and playing, but
And that was going to be the end
and
of
they
it?
they
Yeah.
didn't get paid. They gave all the money to Pete Wegley. Sorry, Pete. And they gave all the proceeds went to Pete Wegley, and he didn't pay any of the bands.
Yeah, the promoter.
He didn't pay anybody, and Steve Albini was like, "Well, I think that's kind of shitty. You should pay. We're not taking any money for this. You should be paying the people who were playing." He's like, "Oh, we had too many." You better cut this out. we had too much overhead, and we needed all this money. I mean, and the place was packed, and it was probably about $10 a person.
It was packed. There were people outside.
There was some money to be made, and Big Black was requesting none of it, and none of the bands got paid any of it. So I'm not very good at math, but I think he made out like a band.
Yeah, we were really good that night.
And we were really good that
time.
night. That was a good one. And I just whatever. Pete. Sorry, Pete.
Now, was that also one of your last shows?
No.
Because we played later with the.
We played up until 1993 when I graduated from college.
At the Southgate House, there was
We
another
played with
show.
the Flaming Lips.
Yeah, Flaming
Oh yeah,
Lips.
Flaming
That
Oh,
Lips.
you played with the Flaming Lips at one point.
Yeah.
But that wasn't at the
Yeah,
South.
it
Yeah, it
was.
was at the Southgate.
Was it? Oh, that's when I peed over the fence.
Yeah.
We were
Okay.
shit-faced.
Yeah,
They
we
were-
They were.
They
We
were
might have had a
heinous.
weed eater.
They
Yeah.
assaulted every sense with like
There was
smoke,
smoke
and
and,
flashing lights, and it was loud as hell.
I got sick as hell. I got a migraine, but I was like out back, like kind of puking from the corner of my mouth, and Mark Urschel comes. I can say your last
Yeah.
name. Mark comes from outside the house, outside the club. And he looks at me and he's like, "You okay?" And I had a bottle of Ballantine 40 ounce
40 ounces.
malt liquor, Ballantine VALTE.
Those things were dirt cheap.
Right, they were like 96 cents. And I had like 2 of them. I was holding them, and he's like, "You gonna be okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." Tufty told me this great story that if you could stand up and just hit the right angle, you could piss over a van. You could just you sit back and you just let it rip, and it goes from your dick all the way over to the next vehicle, over to the thing. And I said, let's try this thing, Mark. It's like, Mark, I'm ready to try this. I don't feel too good, but let's see if we can do this thing. And I had my balls were all filled up with Ballantine malt liquor.
That's how peeing works.
And I was like, okay, man, let's rip this thing. And so I like squeezed. I felt my liver everything was like just it was a perfect perfect storm. And I literally perfect storm. And so I let it rip, and I cleared the fence, and it went all the way over to the next neighbor's yard. Over the fence, there was a wooden fence. Didn't cheat and go through the holes. I went over the fence, and Mark slapped me on the back. He was like, "That was a good show."
All right, so
True story.
So the end of the line came when you moved to San Francisco. Were you guys playing like all the way up to when you moved?
Yeah, we played a show at the Vogue.
Oh, that's right.
And that was like
that was like
Y Store, and it was like a triple. It was the Triple Ripple Jam. And
Shut us down,
and
man.
they shut us down, but it was the triple. We played the Triple Ripple Jam for Marvin for like 5 years. And it started off, we get a slot like at 8 in the morning, probably 8 in the afternoon. I don't know, something.
8 in the afternoon.
8
The late afternoon.
8 o'clock. An early gig, and work our way up. And we worked our way up all the way up the fucking ladder, all the way to the top to get to a spot like 3rd on a Tuesday night, right after the Y Store, but before.
P.S. Dump your
boyfriend or something.
All these names are coming back to me now.
No
But
shit.
but
there was an electric drum set I had to play.
That's right. So you played
Did
an
you?
electric drum set
Yeah.
for that show?
No wonder he was.
Was that the Patrick O'Hara show at the Vogue?
No.
Johnny Quest was our bass player.
Yeah.
And all the kids were in the pit, ready to go, ready to rock. And the place was packed. It
Yeah.
was the patio, the people
Uh-huh.
in the
No,
balcony.
it was the
Vogue.
Sorry, the
So
Vogue.
was it with Exquisite Fashion?
Oh, that's it.
It's-
Exquisite
yeah, it was
Fashion.
the-
It
Not
was their, it
Music
was their
before.
drums.
Yeah, it was their drums.
It was
Yeah.
their drums.
Because I had to use them too. That was like the Math Bat's last show.
Yeah.
And Patrick O'Hara. Remember, Patrick O'Hara came out and did comedy.
Oh.
That was the show where I left him in Bill's van so he would stink it up.
Oh, right.
Well, you know that story,
Oh, I
right?
know that story.
The
I know
dead
that story.
skunk and I.
I've heard that podcast.
Yes.
But I was like talking to the crowd. I was like, yeah, here we go, Sandy Duncan. You say Sandy. You say Duncan. Sandy
This side,
Duncan.
this side,
Sandy,
right side,
this
left side.
this side, left side, right side. And then I was like, what song are we playing? I like whispered to Will. I was like, Will, what are we doing? And he's like, fuck. And he's like, okay, let's 1, 2, 3. I had to count it off again because I completely lost the count of like how many Sandy Duncans went to the left and how many Sandy Duncans went to the right and vice versa. I didn't know, and I turned around and Will was just like, you're an idiot. But he loved me, of course, and he said it with kindness. And I got really upset with myself, so I had this pitcher of water and I was drinking from it, and I saw these brand new fucking monitors, and I was gonna act like a joke and like start pouring it gently down one of the monitors tube that would have destroyed this guy's equipment that it probably cost like $5,000.
It was a
something.
great joke.
It was a great joke that I put together for years. I worked this thing for
I'm
years.
just workshopping
so-
some
I worked
material
on
up here, guys.
and so I started like getting ready to pour it, but I was looking at the guy, the guy who's doing the book, the side
Sound.
side sound. I was pouring it down, looking at him, giving him a wink, like it's not really gonna hurt your stuff. You're gonna be okay. And he went, "That's it, motherfucker! Shut this down! You're not gonna ruin my equipment." And I remember the time I really wanted to curse someone out and get really just fucking nasty and just destroy someone with my mental IQ or whatever you call it.
Sure, I know where we're
Acuity, my mental acuity. And then I was like so pissed off, and I looked at him and I went, "Fuck you, man." And then I walked off the stage, and that was the end of modern vending.
We did get to go. We did get to be backstage when the Y Store put on their costumes.
Yeah,
They had some awesome shows.
They
Yeah,
did
great.
trousers.
We had a lot of friends.
But that was our last show. I fucked it up, and they kicked us off the stage. We didn't get to play our last song. We didn't get to play Kendall, and we never played afterwards. So we owe the public
And the vote.
and the vote. We're waiting for Marvin
You've
and
never done a
Bill to
reunion
put
gig.
something together
Yeah.
for us to maybe come to some terms with the city of Indianapolis and redo that final set.
Well, I
think
remember
we-
the
I think
show
we
you
owe that to
did
the
down
people.
at Marvin's place. What was that? The Hoosier Ballroom?
Hoosier
Is that what he
Ballroom.
had?
Yeah.
Now that was.
That was with Frightwig.
Yeah.
Is that who that was with?
Yeah,
but now
right
was that the night that you ate the White Castles from my crotch?
Yes.
Okay.
That was right.
Now, when I was using that bullhorn, was that the IBM bullhorn that you
That
usually
was
use?
yes. That was the IBM bullhorn in full circle.
A lot of
All
history in
right.
that bullhorn.
Where is
Yeah.
that bullhorn?
Oh, bullhorn.
Well, I've got that on video, and it's going to go up on the website along
Right
with
on.
Yeah, you
this.
had a
All
good
right, put that
costume
shit
on
on
that
there.
night.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, you know, the sad
You were
thing.
so disturbed after that.
Well, he
You were
didn't
shoving
know.
all that.
I didn't
you
know
were shoving
Tony
those
was-
things in his
I
mouth.
didn't know
I
Tony
had-
was going to come and shove White Castles down my gullet.
Well, I was wearing that dildo, that big dildo that they had painted the veins in the head red.
It really
As a
wasn't
nose?
that big.
It was
Brad
pretty
painted
big.
it. It was. If you'll see on the video, it's
It's-
That was the Satan's Donuts still.
yeah, the one that Steve
that's
Tank
right.
put the donuts on at the show in Lafayette.
It's a tiny penis.
But and then I had these big boxer shorts on, and I stuffed them with White Castles. And then I came chasing you out. I had a fright wig too. I had a fright wig and a penis nose. And
You had handcuffs. You handcuffed me at one point. to
well,
your-
the thing was, is I think I got a little vociferous because you're choking. About halfway through, it sounds like you can't breathe
I can't-
because I'm reaching in my crotch and I'm pulling out these White Castles and I'm shoving them down his mouth
I'm
while he's
just like
trying to trying to sing Landlord.
Landlord!
Yeah.
That was fucking heinous. Heinous.
But you weren't a vegetarian at that point,
Yeah,
right?
not at that
okay.
point, but
whew.
shortly
Yeah, you can
afterwards.
get the. Yeah.
Get the idea.
It was.
But-
that was a good show too.
But you watch that show, and it's.
Thanks, Marvin.
And I want to say, Will, you probably have a different memory of it. You weren't in the band at the time, but that show sucked. It was horrible. We opened up for Fright Wig, and I had my mom's bathing suit on, and then underneath
Who
that,
played drums?
underneth
Who played
that,
drums?
Steve Schmidt.
Steve Schmidt, and underneath
That might have been one of his last shows.
And underneath that, I
Oh.
had my mom's square dancing swirly hoop skirt where you can twirl and
Pleated
that might,
thing?
That
Oh,
might be a
You
theme.
promised her you would bring it back.
I did.
That
I
was the
promised
worst
her I'd
part.
bring her back in good shape and everything. So we have like we're kind of like sort of doom and gloomy, like I don't even know what kind of sound we were trying to get after, but I was twirling in my thing, and the audience was like 4 people in the back of the room just going, and then the drummer, God rest her soul, in a Fright Wig was standing at the front, slamming on the stage, going, "You guys are fucking hilarious! You were hilarious!" Or maybe later it wasn't her. It was Deanna from. I think it might have been Deanna. But anyways, one of them kept calling us hilarious. But then I watched this thing, and later I moved to California, and I was like showing these tapes to people to like look at the crazy shit I used to do. And people would watch it, and some people would be like, "Hey, can you turn that off?" Other people would watch it, and they would, they'd get into it and this. But my good friend, I'm gonna call him TG. not to like spoil his good name or anything, but
all our good names have been spoiled.
but he watched it and he said, Duncan, I've got to say that is the most mismatched band I've ever seen in my entire life. You had a drummer that was going like playing like little sloop loops, and the guitar players were playing some twang and this and that, and you were swirling around in a tutu, and the bass player was just staring at the floor, and he's like, man, that was the most fucked up thing I've ever seen. And this guy had seen a lot. He'd seen a lot. And for him to tell me it was the worst thing he'd ever seen, I actually felt pretty good about it. I thought that was good. That was a good one. But yeah, we broke up shortly afterwards.
Yeah, you moved to San Francisco and started your own label, right?
Mm-hmm. I had a job. I worked at I worked in the photo field, and I worked at Marin Photo. They were very nice to me, and I constantly missed work, but they were nice to me and let me keep missing work until I quit. And then I went down to San Francisco and actually got a job at Working Assets Long Distance, which was called WALD, Working Assets Long Distance. Mm-hmm. And they would send out these pamphlets, and with your long distance phone charge or card, you could vote to say, oh, I want to tell Ted Cruz he's an asshole for push button A, or things like that. This will make more sense later.
That's a seller's market.
But anyways, so I worked for them, and it all turned out shitty. It was all fucked up. We started a union.
It's supposed to be a progressive.
They were a
company.
progressive long distance company, and they fired all of us as soon as we started forming a union, and basically gave us away to another part of a company, and basically just fucking us, and that was a real downer. But then when I decided, I was pretty depressed, and I was on a road trip with Chris Lyon, and Chris Lyon's was a very good friend of mine, and we were down in LA, and he looked at me and he was like, Duncan, let's start a record label. And I was like, let's see, I make about $8.75 an hour. I'd have to quit that job to make $5.50 an hour. And then we would, work from there. And I was like, fuck yes, let's do this goddamn thing. And 15 years later, I owed it about 80 grand. That's how it worked out. And I still have Chris Lance in my heart. Chris, I love you. And I love all we had some good days, some bad days, but most of the time it was fun. We had a good time. And I was the only person that worked there, so I was like talking, like walking down the hall, pacing back and forth. How the fuck are we going to pay this bill or that bill? That was the good times I'm talking about. That's that was
the reality of owning a record label.
The reality of owning a record label is that it will turn out to be the most expensive mixtape that you ever make in your entire fucking life. That's it. Thank you. Good night.
Didn't you tell me that you had some like Bob Dylan pictures in your desk drawer or something?
Yeah, the Landy photos. Our good friend Mike Crowder, he knows all about the photos because he's a big Bob Dylan fan, and I sent him some of the photos digitally. I sent him over, the internet, whatever, however that works. I sent them to him, and he looked at the photos, and he's like, Duncan, these photos are wrong. The shadows are coming from the left to the right, instead of the right to the left. And I was like, God damn, he knows a lot about these pictures. So I sent him a couple more, and he's like, Duncan, you've got the Landy pictures. You've got all the fucking Landy pictures. And this guy Landy would hang out with Bob Dylan, the only guy who let hang out with him and take pictures of his family, and jumping on trampolines, just like this beautiful, existence type of thing. And we were just, we were just a little shop printing pictures, one at a time. He'd frame them and he'd send them to some museums, and we do all this stuff. And then one day the guy never showed up again, and Landy, it was actually Landy. He had just left, and a printer friend of mine came up to me and he said, "Hey Duncan, I've got all the Bob Dylan Landy photos right here on this fire disc," or whatever it was called. He's like, "How would you like to have it?" I was like, "Oh, fuck yes, I'll put that in my drawer." And for later on, I could, if things go bad, I could print those later on. And then I got sick with some kind of diarrhea thing, and it lasted a couple weeks, and I came back to work, and my friend came running through the door, and he was like pulling his hair. He was bald, but he had some little like tufts of hair he was pulling out, and he was like, "Duncan, goddamn it, please tell me you have those Landy photos. He's fucking here. He just showed up, and he wants to see some new scans." It's like, I don't know. I've been gone for a while with the diarrhea problem. Let me open up my drawer. I opened up my drawer, and it was still there. And I was like, "Here you go, my friend." And he saved his job, and saved my job, and saved all of our jobs, because none of us got sued. And we had the Landy photos, back into Landy's hands. And
you sent me copies of
the Beatles.
The Beatles photos from India.
Oh.
From the negatives.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think we should be talking about that.
We'll wrap this up. But speaking of photography, you did the album cover, did you not?
Of what?
Modern Vending?
Yeah.
George Vanja actually.
George
put that
Vanja
together.
should get most of the credit, because him and his girlfriend.
Suzanne.
They really worked. We were stupid, and it was
Duncan's dad had killed a boar.
Yeah.
And we had a boar head.
We had a boar head.
With Bub's hoof.
Right.
Yeah, we had a boar head, and we wanted.
I mean, when you got a boar head.
I just have this brain thing that hurts, and I start thinking, and things like they just get like all riled up, and we were in a thrift store, and it was me and Janie, and we were borrowing what's the guy who lost my bicycle? Chani. We were in Chani's van, and we were in the.
That's the dude I was trying to think of.
John Wallace.
We were in the thrift store, and there's this picture. It was like 7 feet tall, and it was about 7 feet wide. That's not 7 feet. And I had this this bombshell of an idea. I said, what we could do, we could put the Aztec's hand. It was a picture of an Aztec standing on a lonely rock overlooking a valley, and the Aztec was pointing with his finger like, "This is where we're going." And I had this great idea. I was like, what if we took Terry Parks' head, he was a friend of ours, and we blew it up really big, and then we acted like the Aztec was holding a giant Terry head ripped from his body. And that would be a good front cover. I think that would really look out. And so these guys went along with me, and they were like, "Yeah, let's follow Duncan's artistic vision," which fucking turns out like shit every time I try to do anything. So we got that, but so I had Terry in the backyard making these faces. He'd have to like hold his jaw open for like 30 seconds at a time, and his eyes are running, and he's like veins are popping out. And I'm like, click, okay, click, okay. Well, let's take these pictures, and I would get them developed to 20 inches by. 20 inches by 24 or something. And so I had these huge heads of Terry and various facial problem. You know, it looked like he had problems, expressions, and facial expressions, and we put him, and then we put him on the wall, or we had cut out the giant picture of the Aztec. We put the big giant Terry heads on the wall, and so we had this picture that was about as big as Will's table right here. I don't know how I've lost my math abilities, and we had friends touch it up and try to make it into an 11, you know, that would fit into a record sleeve, 8x12, like whatever a record goes into.
12 by 12.
12 by 12. We wanted to do 12 by 12.
Rectangular records.
We wanted, you know, anyways, we wanted, you know, to have this thing pared down and fit, you know, an album inside it. And so me and I think Mike Crowder and some other people, we drove up from Indianapolis to Chicago, and we had this huge photo, this giant photo that all this work went into, and a lot of pen and pencil work. And then on the back there was this great picture of Will pointing in the sky in a Richmond, Virginia park, pointing at the sky, a clear sky. And then what they had done was drawn a picture of Elvis Presley. Will's pointing to the sky to Elvis Presley, and no one else can see it.
Yeah,
it was a cloud, and it was it was beautiful.
Still is.
And it still is. We have it. Tony will put it on the web board. And and so what we did then, you know, and so we had these huge fucking pictures, and I gave them to the good Steve Adams. And he's like, what the hell am I going to do with these things? There's no way you can turn this into an LP. This is ridiculous. And it's like, I was like, we worked really hard on this. Like, hundreds of hours went into this, you know, and then, like a hand had to be made like to carry the scuff of the hair of Terry's giant head, and veins had to be drawn in.
We had to erase the god's head and superimpose the boar's
the boar
head.
head. That's where the boar.
The peccary.
This is where the peccary comes in. We put the peccary into the god's head, so it looked like the peccary was holding a giant Terry's head that was dripping blood, and the name of the album was called One Bad Peccary, and it fit beautifully. I mean, this was a cosmic fitting. This was something we could. One Bad Peccary, and then I showed it to Tim. He's like, "Are you really hung up on the idea of this peccary thing?" I was like, "The album's called One Bad Peccary. We've got to keep the title. We've got to keep the title." And so he took it in, and he took it into some of his digital friends, and he's like, "These guys are idiots. All they had to do was scan the picture. I could have done all the afterwork," because what had happened was on the album cover that Tony will post on the webpage, the photograph didn't go out far enough, so the edges had to be hand colored. And hand colored
to get the entire God on the
get the entire God, to get it to be a 12 by 12 like a record, you know, should be. And we had all this thing going, all this time going on, and I lost that train of thought. Hold on.
Tim could have fixed it.
Tim could have fixed it quick, real quick, but it took us forever. And so Tim was like, "Yeah, try to come up with a different idea." And we said, "There's no fucking way. This is One Bad Peccary, and that's how it stands." And he's like, "Okay, well, we'll do it, but it's not going to look very good." They told us, I mean, the printers told us, this is going to look fucked up. It's going to look like a photograph and then like some third grader art off to the sides. and it's gonna look stupid.
Accurate.
Accurate, but very accurate of what we were trying to convey. And so they did it for us, and he'll show a picture of the cover. But it's probably up there for the worst album cover of all.
You know what's one of the best things I
time.
know? I was watching MTV, and there was this interview with Henry Rollins, and he's standing inside this record store, and right over his shoulder is the freaking One Bad Peck. This is no shit.
Beautiful. I didn't know Henry.
It made it well worth
Hank,
it.
I call him Hank. I didn't believe it, a word of it. Don't believe a word of it.
And so then it was after that we called our good friend Steve Albini and said we have some new songs and would it be possible for us to record them with you.
Yeah, Chris ran into him a show and was like, dude,
Yep.
will you record this stuff for him? And he's like, fuck yes.
One
I'll
condition.
One condition.
Can't use my name anywhere on this stuff.
Was that a condition? I don't think he had that condition.
No, the condition was we had to buy him some Partridge or Pepperidge Farms.
Chessmen.
Some
Chessmen
cookies.
Yeah, the chessmen.
And get and we had to stop whenever he decided it was time to go shoot stick. We were done recording.
And but there was this element that we didn't want to just put something out that was recorded by Steve Albini, and that's all people cared about.
Yeah, we didn't use his name.
We
on
didn't
the
use
tape
his name,
anymore.
and that was our reflection of.
You know, the week after we got done with that recording, my friend Joel, who was my roommate in Bloomington, who ran Spin Art Records in New York, called me and said, "Are you guys recording with Steve Albini? I'm looking in the trades out here. It says you're recording with Steve Albini." And I was like,
the month before he had finished that Nirvana thing.
Yep.
So, I mean, to put this into time frame perspective, he had just finished Nirvana, and I believe we were the next band he recorded.
I think all
We did
these
up in
dates are
Chicago.
off. God bless all of us, but I think there's a time wheel missing somewhere. But because I think the Nirvana stuff happened later, because when I was in California, it had just come out in 1993. But
It was after Jesus Lizard Goat came out.
Right.
Yeah.
No, well, you're close. You're
No,
close.
I'm certain of it. He had
Okay.
nothing good to say about What's-Her-Face.
Right.
"Oh, that's right."
Remember, he was
Yeah.
going on about how, they basically had to toss her out of there to
Yeah.
get some shit done because
Okay.
old boy couldn't do anything while she
That's
was
right.
around.
Yeah, I remember that.
You'll tell me later. We'll talk about it. Okay.
That was bad timing because that was we finished that and we're shopping it around, and that's when Duncan moved.
That's when I moved. I tried. Okay, it was like my one last desperate thing. I had like all of these names, and Botch again gave me all of these names and all of these magazines, and I had a computer printout. I had little tags. I had all of our cassettes. I had envelopes that would fit into the mail, prepaid. I'd stick them all in. I'd mail out like 15 a day, and I covered maybe 15 a day times 5, about 300 CDs, and no one wrote back to us at all. And then basically I said, "Fuck this. This is not going to happen."
I mean, the fact of it is the realities of a 40-hour work week kind of set in after college.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it just ended. Our last show, it was at the Vogue. At the Vogue, that was the last one, and
A song short.
And that's
That
the one with the
song's
electric
short.
drums?
Pretty sure.
I don't remember that at all.
And our good buddy MC, I'd like to call him, wants us to make sure that the people know that we are trying to get together to do another concert, but they haven't quite worked out the deals.
No one's calling back.
No matter how many mailers we send out.
But there's a briefcase full of money.
Is there a chance you guys might one day, when you're in town, do like a
There's no way in hell
reunion
we'll
thing?
ever play again.
Just
pretty definitive.
Yeah, but he seemed to be a little wistful.
But
He seemed to be a little wistful about the way it ended.
you got to keep.
We
hope
could do some
alive.
storytelling.
Yeah.
You keep hope
That's
alive,
not
and you know we might like you say at the Melody Inn, we could play maybe like 4 or 5 shows over a couple of days, and
What?
yeah.
You went from nowhere to a residency at the most booked club in Indianapolis.
But those are my goddamn agreements. Oh, those are my goddamn agreements.
Those are the terms.
Those are the terms, motherfuckers.
All right, before we cut this out, we would be remiss to not talk at least a little bit about Steve Coker.
Well, God loves Steve Coker.
Because he was kind of in there the whole time, right?
Janie brought the Coker thing on.
Yeah, that was
on everyone.
You dumped that shit.
I mean,
on
literally,
That-
everything
I cannot
Coker
take
is
what,
responsible.
but I can't take
Janie
complete
is
credit.
responsible.
It was a Mike Newell, Janie Danger
Oh, okay.
combo.
There, good
Okay.
deal.
Fair
All
enough.
right.
So-
Well, I mean, he helped carry equipment and stuff, right? I mean, he was.
Oh,
hell, what?
Oh man!
He was just
So all he did was
pot.
bring free donuts.
No,
Yeah.
chips.
Janie and Newell did the picture, which was actually his graduation
Right,
photo, I believe,
right.
from Ball State.
And I still have all that stuff.
Oh man!
You
And
use his visage for
Well,
like,
that's what Mark
for
and I had
fan
our
stuff,
amps
right?
covered. in
He
his
signed
face.
it over to Mike and I.
I had the guitar covered in Coker's.
All right,
roses
just
Dishes.
relay
This is
the
like
story
drink
of
from
who he
mine.
I
is.
still have. I have one of those.
Explain-
My gift from
Janie,
Janie
explain who he is. And how you
Explain
met him.
who he is and what he became and how.
He was held the
He
record
was
for the
the-
most credits at Ball State of any student of
I
all time.
believe
He
that's
was-
still accurate.
He was the Confederacy of Dunces, if you've ever read that book.
I have.
I mean that in the nicest way possible.
I know you do, but what do you mean by you say he's gone to Ball State longer than anybody else?
He
Yeah.
earned more
He
credit.
earned
He
more
earned more
credits.
credits. He was a perpetual student for a long time.
He was in the Navy for
Right.
6 years, and
And he
he
won-
went to school basically.
But he won a lottery.
Yeah, the
thing or
Publishers
something.
Clearinghouse.
He won Publishers Clearinghouse, so that's how he lived for a long time.
This dude would drive from his dock in the Navy dock on the East Coast to a party in Muncie, Indiana, literally in a 48-hour period of time, and try to get back before that fucking boat left dock. And he missed twice. Twice he had to be lifted by helicopter out to his ship because he to Muncie to party.
Right. Okay, so now next, explain how he came about.
He came about because Mike had this.
Mike Newell.
Yeah, Mike Newell had this
Jokey.
little
Supreme
picture
Commander Jokey.
of him,
Supreme Commander
and
Jokey.
he blew it up,
Uh-huh.
right? And he blew it up to like poster size, and I was like, we gotta market this.
Well, no, wait a minute. Well, what I'm saying is, how did Steve Coker appear? I mean, how
Because
did you meet him?
he
He's at
was
every party.
everywhere.
Yeah.
He would be at every
Everybody at
party,
Ball State.
and he would every
Before
party.
any of us ever went.
Oh yeah, and then he would always show up with the chips, and everybody would yell, "Steve!"
Right.
It was like they just expected him to show up, and he would. I mean, at this point, he's 35 years old, maybe,
Plus,
and he's
38.
just constantly,
everywhere.
hitting on the girls like he's 20,
Right.
but he was really genuine about.
He was genuine.
He was very genuine. And there wasn't anything fake or phony about him. He was just Steve.
No guile.
No
Yeah.
guile. Zero guile.
And that was what was unique about him. He was really genuine about who he was and what he was doing, and he thought it was the cat's pajamas.
He thought, and the women hated him because he had such an antiquated idea what it meant between like a man and a woman to have a date and then not get sexual favors and things like that. And then the men hated him because he had this long giant. Wait, that's a different story.
That's the Dean story.
That's why I got on the Dean's list.
You know, my dream was always to get Steve Coker, Steve Tagg, and the legendary Stardust Cowboy in a room, and then just turn on the camera and back out.
Yeah, we started making T-shirts, and people started just buying them up.
Yeah.
And
And then I went to Janie. Janie and I were really, really tight, and it's like, I was going back home for the first semester, and then I came back, and we lived together. I was like, hey, Janie, we're tight and everything, and I was like, you know, the one thing he showed me the Steve Coker poster, and he put it up, and he's like, you know. I'm like, God damn, how does someone make a picture that big? And I said, the one thing in my life that I would just feel so bad about and hate forever, if someone did that to me. And then he's like, hey, check this picture out. It's my photo from an 8th grade, poster size, hanging on the wall. And I'll love you forever.
that was a gem. So,
ending on Steve Coker, huh?
Yeah. It gives me an excuse to use the
But
turkey leg
the thing
picture.
is, it's still Steve to this day.
I think so. I don't know. No one knows.
I haven't seen him since the reunion show, like 5 or 6 years
Chris
ago.
talked to him a couple weeks ago, right?
No, not a couple weeks
Oh,
ago.
couple-
Well, he's
I
on
talk to him a
Facebook.
couple times a year.
Oh, okay.
He's still chattering on Facebook. He's still
He
got
comes-
fans.
He on occasion comes down to town and goes to the
Mouse.
that shitty ass place over there on Keystone that
The
has
Mouse
the
Trap?
hippie music. Yeah,
He's got this on
Can Band
Facebook,
Central.
Steve Coker
Yes.
Fan Club.
He does?
Yeah,
he's old.
the Steve Coker Appreciation Society.
Run by.
Run by Janie Danger.
Run by me.
Oh no, he's still got. There's all kinds of kids that know who he is, man.
Yeah.
I
Literally.
remember the bass player from White Zombie wore one. She had ripped jeans and she shoved it into her jean hole and jammed with it the whole time. And she's got pictures. There's pictures of her rocking out with a Steve Coker doll sticking out of her kneecap. It was beautiful. It's fucking beautiful.
Who was that?
What's her face? Jane
Yeah.
Zombie. Or
Oh, yeah.
The
We
zombie.
played with them.
Yeah.
They
White
stayed at our
Zombie.
house too. So my story of like meeting a famous person, White Zombie stayed at our house, and they weren't even famous or anything.
It was
And
pretty
we
famous.
had this Atari game that someone got at the
Oh,
Muncie Mission or something,
Nice.
and we had Joust was the only game we
Joust,
had.
yeah.
Right.
I
And
remember.
the controllers were broken, so you could only fly left.
Yeah,
And I
you could
remember
left.
like spending the evening with Rob Zombie playing left-handed Joust.
And the drummer the other guitar player, Steve Five or Steve Gay,
Tom
Tom
Five.
Five,
From God Rock?
Tom Gay, from where?
Didn't we go to? Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
And he carried a bag of popcorn bigger than his body because it was the cheapest thing that he could take with him on the road and not starve to death. So he'd just constantly be eating popcorn.
He ended up leaving us in Times Square.
Yeah, so that's
Remember
what I was
that?
gonna say when we were in New York. Yeah.
He left us in Times Square, and he got really pissed off when he saw us play at the record cantina from CBGB's because he thought we sounded like Tom or
Tom Verlaine.
Tom
No.
Petty.
Television.
not Tom Petty, not Television,
Tom Jones.
not Tom Jones,
Tommy Stinson.
not Tommy Stinson, John Cougar Mellencamp.
Oh shit.
Oh
He
shit.
thought he was like, you John Cougar Mellencamp sanding motherfuckers, and he got pissed off and he like walked off. And his band Angel Rot never saw the light of day because I squashed it. That's what you get when you fuck with me, man.
We literally have to end this podcast because we cannot tell any stories about what happened in Times Square, or I will lose my job.
Back when Times Square was really Times
They will
Square.
never let me around
Tony
children
knows.
again.
I think I know what you're referring to.
I know you know what we're referring to.
Well, that was fun.
Chickens, goats.
Oh sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'll cut all this out.
I'm talking about Sandy Duncan.
When
Yeah.
me and Dave Fulton and Mike Sheets went for the first time, and this was like 79, real early, and we went to one of those places in Times Square, and they had an entire floor dedicated to various animals. Well, look, this was new to us then. I mean, this is your grandpa still had to walk 3 miles for porn back then.
Sure.
And
We are directly below my daughter's bed.
anyway, so what we did is we put a quarter in or something, and Mike Sheets would go like, "Hey, this guy's fucking a chicken," and then me and Dave would come over, and we'd both stick our head there, going, "Oh my God, how's he doing?" And then you hear the guy behind us going, "One in a booth at a time," and then it would happen again. Mike Sheets would be like, "Hey, look, another in the goat." We'd go look, and we go, "Come on, one in a booth at a time."
Look, this says it was posted 2 hours ago.
What is it?
Of a chicken
Picture of Steve.
fucking-
A Steve Coker sighting.
How long ago?
It says 2 hours.
What's it of?
Steve.
Well, where? Oh my God! There he is in the Cub hat. That's Steve in the Cubs hat.
He's at
In
the
a Cubs
Chub.
hat.
I think that's at
Cubs
the
hat? That's
Chub.
weird.
Yeah, in the Cubs hat. It was at the
Yep.
Chug. It's the Chug.
Let me see.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'll be using that
Star
one.
Spangled Coker.
I'll be using that
I
and
need
the
those.
turkey leg.
I need those if you can send them to me because I just have the like shots of the artwork that.
Okay.
4 of those to me, please.